Lewis Hamilton has won a race in every season of Formula One that he's competed in, a record stretching all the way back to his rookie year of 2007. That's 15 seasons in a row. This year, his win record looks at risk as the Mercedes car is tricky to handle, and the new porpoising regulations may impact Mercedes more than any other team. So can Lewis Hamilton get a win in 2022? Let's have a look. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. Is this Hamilton's worst car? Lewis Hamilton was fortunate to join the sport in a team that was competing right at the front. McLaren are one of the few teams at the top of the sport that also provide a path for rookies to join their team directly. Hamilton did exactly this in 2007 and was put straight into a car that was capable of race wins and podiums. And Hamilton achieved this with 9 podiums in a row in his first 9 races in the sport. And importantly, he was able to achieve 4 race victories that season, kicking off a series of seasons where he was at least able to achieve a single race win, which is still ongoing today. One of the worst cars Hamilton faced during his 6 seasons with McLaren was the 2009 machine. The new regulations of that year meant that McLaren were far less competitive than they had been a few years previously. The season on the whole at the front was a battle between Brawn and Red Bull, with the former taking a commanding lead in the early stages before Red Bull developments allowed them to catch up and make the championship a bit more interesting. But on the whole, 5 teams were able to score wins that season, with Hamilton still scoring 2 wins despite having perhaps the 3rd fastest car. Hamilton made a shock move to Mercedes for 2013, the team that had finished 5th in the championship the season before and had scored just 3 podium finishes. Many thought it was a questionable move for Hamilton, but in 2013, Hamilton did get that single race win he needed in Hungary, and this result, combined with 2 wins for Rosberg in the first half of that year, actually arguably put pressure on the Red Bull team as they continued the development of that car despite the regulation shift for 2014, while Mercedes halted development to focus on producing the best possible car for the new turbo hybrid era, and we all know how they got on with that. So Hamilton has raced a few poor cars in his career, but has always been able to win races. So is 2022 his worst car yet? Well, after Friday running in Canada, Hamilton commented that the Mercedes car was so bad, and even went as far as to say that the car was undrivable and the worst car he's had in his career. And certainly on the face of it, with the porpoising, that Mercedes looks dreadful at times. There have been good and bad races so far this season, with the car looking much better in Spain with the smooth track surface, but really poor in Azerbaijan with the street circuit surface. In Canada, the team had a poor start to the weekend, hence the comment from the 7-time world champion. But what the team have been able to do this season is recover their weekends. They've kept themselves in the hunt for second in the Constructors' Championship purely on the basis of consistency from their drivers and reliability from the team. Their car has been impressive so far this year, with no retirements through 9 rounds. The team and drivers are also opting to take risks when it comes to setups and strategies, as they know that they need to do something different if they want to compete at the front. And this is where Hamilton and Mercedes may benefit going forwards this year. But before we take a look at the risks taken by Mercedes, I want to take a moment to ask you to consider subscribing for Behind the Drive. In the last month, about 75% of the people watching my videos weren't yet subscribed. So if you haven't already and want to help me get to 50k, then please consider hitting the subscribe and like buttons. Mercedes risk and reward. So far in 2022, George Russell has been the top performer at the Mercedes team. After Canada, George Russell has 111 points to Hamilton's 77, and this is down to the fact that on the face of it, Russell has been super consistent. He hasn't finished outside of the top 5 all season so far, and has been there to pick up 3 podium finishes whenever the cars ahead have faltered. Now, there have been many theories regarding the reasons why Hamilton has been slower on average. Many of these have suggested that Hamilton has gone for significantly different setups and has been taking different specifications of car in order to gather a huge amount of data and treat even the races as a testing session to help the Mercedes team figure out their problem faster, and subsequently solve it for the second half of this season and beyond. There's definitely some truth in this. Earlier this year, it was seen that Hamilton was carrying additional sensors with a light under his Mercedes car, which will have added weight to a probably already overweight race car. This will have helped the team in their efforts to understand their challenge and understand why the porpoising was happening in the first place. From the reports of the teams, the phenomenon isn't replicated in the wind tunnel or the simulators, and it is so specific to the track surface and setup of the car. In Baku, Hamilton was slower than Russell by roughly 0.2 of a second, and Toto Wolff claimed that Hamilton was running a different specification of floor, a part of the car that the team appeared to be focusing most, if not all, of their development efforts to improve their biggest problem. So perhaps Hamilton has been sacrificing himself when it comes to the team's performance, while giving Russell the opportunity to get up to speed in his new team. Perhaps the sacrifices Hamilton has made could tell the full story when it comes to the results gap, but I don't think that should take away from how good George Russell has been at stepping up and proving his worth against the established top driver in the Mercedes team. As for the risk and reward for Mercedes, well, in Canada, Hamilton commented on how disappointing his car was, but in qualifying there was rain, which meant it was a leveller and they could be more competitive. And then it was in the race that the team proved that they could fix the problems Hamilton was talking about. The team changed the setup after Friday, and the car went from being very stiff with the rear end stepping out in the corners to a car with some understeer, which was more to the driver's liking. So the team have clearly gained enough insight from the season so far to enable them to know where to go with the setup whenever they have an understanding of the problems the drivers are experiencing. So it's a positive sign that perhaps the work done earlier in the season by Hamilton may have set them up for success despite having a poor car. For me, Canada and Spain were races that show that the Mercedes team are on the way towards success once again, but the gap to the leaders in Baku and Monaco showed that they weren't able to control the bouncing effect as much as they would have liked. The mid-season porpoising regulations introduced by the FIA following the Azerbaijan Grand Prix were set up in a way to penalise the teams that were suffering more, rather than hurting all teams like the proposal from Mercedes themselves of raising ride heights across the board. However, in Canada, it didn't seem to be something that affected the Mercedes team too badly. Perhaps it's a sign of the fact that the Mercedes team can manage the pouncing on better surfaces as they showed in Barcelona. Will Hamilton keep hold of his record? So Mercedes got off to a poor start in 2022, but with the hard work of the team and the dedication from the drivers, they're definitely in a better place now than they were at the start of the year. There hasn't been a season where just two teams won races since 2016, and so it's likely that there will be at least one opportunity for Mercedes over the rest of this year. Based on the cost cap, Mercedes should have had more resources to spend on this year's car development than Red Bull and Ferrari, purely based on the fact that they've had fewer retirements and fewer reliability challenges so far. So once they get the floor and the porpoising under control, they may well be able to unlock some more performance in that car. There's lots to come in this season in terms of grid drops for engine replacements, and that will surely enable the Mercedes cars to get themselves further up the order and challenge the top teams. Either way, with developments, they may well be more competitive next season. So if there are just a handful of opportunities for Mercedes, there must be a question of which driver may grab that chance first. Hamilton is of course a trusted driver who we all know is capable of achieving those race wins, but for Russell to achieve his first win in this year, despite all of the challenges the team have faced, it could well set him up for a great career. For Mercedes, I hope to see them challenge at the front once again in 2022. All three of these top teams have drivers that I believe are capable of achieving race wins, and if they all have the right machinery, it could set up a brilliant second half of the season. There's a long way to go in 2022, and there are more dedicated circuits in the latter half of the year, which may put the Mercedes in a better position than they have been at the street circuits that they've struggled with the porpoising. I believe Mercedes will get a race win at some point this season, but to achieve that result, they will need to overcome the huge consistency of Max Verstappen, who could even challenge Sebastian Vettel's consecutive race wins record if he keeps going like this. And if you want to learn more about why Verstappen is so consistent, then make sure you watch this video next.